like to introduce the moderator for our second panel, Angie Tang. Angie is a member of the Board of Trustees at Berkeley College, and she is so devoted to our institution and to this event. She's been participating in this event for the past 4 years. She's a remarkable moderator and also a journalist and venture capitalist, so you want to talk to her about impact investing. We're going to get moving with our WEW 2019 event here. We heard some remarkable stories today, and the one thing that I can say about the panelists here, you never hesitated when I reached out to you, even if you couldn't be on a call, or we were texting each other and emailing each other up until like 1 o'clock this morning with the right, did I have the right, can I sell my book? And Adele Wilson has generously offered to provide a gift of her tips to celebrity, building your celebrity brand. And so you can download that. She'll give you the information later on in the discussion. She'll also share copies of her latest book for anyone who would like to purchase that book. I know that we're purchasing books from our panelists for our libraries so that we could help our own students in giving them advice. So I'd like to thank you all for being with us today, Veronica, Alex, Eleanor, Adele, Jamie, and Angie, for your commitment to Berkeley College and to women.
Thank you, Angela, and a very excellent team of the marketing external communications that help host these events for the last 4 years. And thank you to our president, Michael Smith, who has championed this series of discussion that are thought-provoking and also very educational and nurturing to our students and our general community as well. And I know I have learned a lot in the last 4 years. Every year I have a major takeaway. Without themes, it's been a very thoughtful crafting each year. And when we talk about superpowers, it's quite a timely event. Many of us with teenage children knows that there was a big unveil this past week. There's a new woman superhero, the Batwoman. So the Batwoman just was unveiled. The series premiere came out last week. And I think I was very moved to see how cinematography move into how this protagonist find her superpowers. And most definitely, you're not born with superpowers. We have to come through quite an extensive journey to find them, to nurture your interest, and to find purpose in how to leverage your superpowers to help others. Right? And so these women here really, truly have exhibited that, having found their superpowers, and I'm quite sure that on your journeys, there are some very interesting challenges that the audience would love to hear. And first off, I would love for our panelists to introduce themselves, maybe a 30-second about what you do, and then we can proceed with the discussion. We'll begin with Veronica or with Jamie.
Hi. My name is Jamie Zellermeyer. I'm here today on behalf of New York Women in Film and Television, of which I've been on the board of directors for the last 4 years and just started a 2-year cycle to be the president of the board of directors, which I'm very excited about. I really believe in the organization. I am also a film and television producer. I just recently put together a conference called IFP Week, which is a big film market conference with public programming and speed dating for investors and projects, both film, episodic, and documentary. I'm also a mom, which for me is a very important part of my story as a woman in the entertainment industry. To 2 kids, an 8 and a 10-year-old, and sort of how that changes each year and changes how I'm able to participate in the business and also manage my household and attempt to be a good parent. And I think for me, those things work very much together. So I always like to bring that up.
Thank you, Jamie. And Adele?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. My name is Adele Wilson. I am the founder and CEO of Celebrity Media Group, a two-time best-selling author, and a media coach and marketing strategist. And what I do mainly is I teach entrepreneurs and professionals how to present with power, poise, and style on camera, get booked on TV and media, and become a celebrity in their industry. And so we do that through a number of ways. And by the way, celebrity sometimes is off-putting to some folks. So what that mainly means is subject matter expert, go-to expert, thought leader, that sort of thing. And so we do that through a number of ways, through video production, video marketing, through media training, training folks on camera, so that they can learn how to do their business videos and their social media videos, so that they can attract media attention for their books. We do that also through book publishing, image and branding, so through a number of ways, but which I'm sure we'll explore as we go through the panel. Thank you. I'm really honored to be here this morning.
Good morning. My name is Eleanor Tatum. I am the publisher, editor-in-chief of the New York Amsterdam News, which is one of the oldest and largest black newspapers in the country. We're 110 years old. I am also the mother of a 9-year-old girl who is probably the center of my life, besides the newspaper, so I've got 2 children. I'm not sure which one is more challenging or more expensive. But as Jamie said, balancing work and home is one of the things that I think is most important. And I'm also a single mother, which adds to those challenges. And being an entrepreneur, even though it's a legacy newspaper, it's still an entrepreneurship when you are working with a business and trying to figure out new ways every day of making a dollar, especially in an industry that a lot of people are saying is dying. So trying to reinvent yourself every day of every week of every month of every year is challenging and also exciting. And so I look forward to speaking with you more today about it.
Hello, my name is Alex Tabar. I'm a media and content producer from the Dominican Republic. I'm the CEO and founder of Yucalab Digital Media, and also, which is a digital communications agency, and that specializes in content creation and transcreation, and we connect brands and companies with the Hispanic market through content and adapting their content. Also, I'm the founder of Latinas in Media, which is a community of Latinas entrepreneurs and doing media and doing digital media as well.
I'm Veronica Dagger. I'm a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. I'm the creator and host of the Secrets of Wealthy Women podcast, where we interview women about obstacles, focus on the idea of resilience, coming back from failure. It's a whole focus of the show. We interview people like Aisha Curry, Miko Brand, Sheila Johnson, Maria Sharapova. I'm also a writer. I wrote the book Resilience, How 20 Ambitious Women Use Obstacles to Fuel Their Success. So as you can see, coming over obstacles, bouncing back from failure is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I love to talk about that as well. Married, live in Brooklyn, and I was a caregiver for my mom last year.
Wow, that's, I think, a good segue into talking about setbacks and overcoming them. So the opening scene of Batwoman, which is also takes on to Captain Marvel, to Supergirl, and the Black Widow, and Wonder Woman. All these new launches of great women superheroes. And they don't begin by being superheroes. They begin with how they lost their family, how they lost the Civil War, how they lost the love of their life, and how they almost lost their own lives. And many of you have charted that waters. So we'll begin with Veronica, who talked about talking with women with setbacks, and would like you to use your 3 minutes to talk about finding your superpower. And on that journey, how did you get there? Our timekeeper, Linda, is right in the front row. So 1 minute up, and you have 3 minutes each. We'll keep everyone on track.
Concise. So I would say my superpower is making order out of chaos. And I say that because when I was 11 years old, my dad died suddenly, leaving my mom as a single mom of 2 young kids. My mom at the time did not know anything about finances, how to pay write out a check, where investment accounts were, and was completely overwhelmed by basically the obstacle of raising 2 kids on her own suddenly, and just not knowing how a lot of things in the world worked financially, because my dad handled everything. So I think seeing her, I have images of her sitting at the kitchen table with my aunts and her friends, next to her, trying to teach her basics about finance. I remember thinking, like, that's never going to be me. Like, I'm never going to be in that situation. And so throughout my years, I became very focused on how to take hold of my own money. How can I be a financially independent woman? And so I studied finance in school. I interned in financial companies, read the Wall Street Journal, which is sort of a shameless plug now. But I did all these things just because I wanted to feel in control. Like, I wanted to create my own order. To my mom's credit, fast forward many years later, she became savvy herself. She learned how to handle the finances. But I think that experience of complete chaos and having to adapt after that made me really committed to helping other women so they're never in that same situation that we were, that they're never left scrambling, that maybe with this podcast or with the stories I write or the book I wrote, this will give some people a bit of a heads up so they know how to take hold of their finances, so they're prepared, and that they also know that they can bounce back from probably the worst time in their lives. I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, and that can be a super challenging but really rewarding thing to have. And also, going through careers here in the city, it can be a really tough place to work. And I've absolutely had my own challenges, been laid off, had, to scramble for money. I have gone through all of that myself. But I think the key point is, and I don't want to assume anything about anyone, but any of the personal challenges I have been like so much harder than the professional ones, generally speaking. So I like to say, if you can get through those personal challenges, there's like no stopping you in terms of what you can get accomplished professionally.
I will say that my superpower is my voice. I think everything that I've gained until today, even though I'm very shy, I've asked for it, or I express what I wanted to do. Like, mostly all my jobs, I didn't go to a job interview. I just went to the person and I said, I want to do this. And that's how I open a lot of opportunities. And my biggest weapon, I will say that it's the internet, because it has helped me to amplify my voice. And has become part of my mission. Helping other Latinas and other entrepreneurs to get a voice and to get it out there and to do what they want to do to reach other dreams, and to support them with resources, but always like saying what they want and where they want to go.
So when I think about my superpower and I think about my personal story, they're very intertwined. But it all starts with my father and my mother. But my father, in the sense, because when I was very little, he was the deputy borough president of Manhattan, and I remember being about 3 or 4 years old, and he bringing me to a board meeting of some sort down in the municipal building, and I'm in a big room, and there were all these men. They were all smoking cigars, and I was just a little tiny girl, and they were saying something that I have no idea what it was about at this point. But I remember tugging on his arm and saying, well, what happens if they did this, Daddy? And he told all the men in the room to be quiet for a moment and said, my daughter has something to say. And that's when I realized that my voice mattered. Fast forward a few years, when I was in the first grade and I couldn't read. And I was at Hunter College Elementary School, where it was for gifted children. And everyone said, well, there's something wrong with her. She can't read. And they found out that I had dyslexia. That teacher, luckily, was a fantastic teacher and said, well, we know she's smart because she's here, and we've got to work with her. The next two teachers in the next grades up said, well, she's dumb. She's not going to amount to anything. And just basically put me in a corner and didn't teach me. My parents, though, gave me all the support in the world. They got me tutors. They got me extra help outside of the classroom. They took me out of Hunter after the 6th grade and put me in private school, but they had the resources to do that. 30 years later, I found out that my grandmother was the one that actually paid for my tutoring. But they were able to do that, luckily. But the superpower that I found that I did have was the resiliency to not give up, but also to find the people that were going to have my back and ignore the people that were the naysayers and to close them off, even though it was hurtful, and to just say, okay, those people don't matter. I'm going to find those people that believe in me and listen to them. And so, you know, you've got to find the people that believe in you. Those individuals that are going to say, you can do it. And those ones that just don't want to lift you up, forget about them. And don't let them bring you down.
I love that. And actually, a nice round of applause for the story about your parents as well. I think parents should be the ones, well, in our cases, right, our first teachers, right? And so the first people to guide us. So nice round of applause to all of you who are parents. I'm not a parent, but I'm a teacher. And so my superpower, I would say, and probably less emotional story, but is the ability to connect with people through the camera lens, in person, through coaching, through training. And I came about it through a little bit of need, really, but I think I was kind of a natural born teacher, if you will. I tutored when I was in high school. My father also, although a physician, was also a professor, retired now. I became a corporate trainer, and corporate trainers, I didn't call myself an entrepreneur at the time, but I was, because if I didn't teach, I wasn't making money. And I didn't work directly for a company, I worked for myself. And they would call me, Adele, can you teach communication skills? Absolutely, I'll be there. The next day, can you, on Thursday, we have a new client, can you teach public speaking and presentation skills? Absolutely, can you teach? And I wound up teaching 50 courses over the years to 14,000 people from all walks of life, CEOs of companies, doctors, nurses, educators, but I loved it. And so my superpower that I believe is to take information, synthesize it, and be able to present it in a way that's simple and digestible to folks. Information that might seem esoteric to others. And it served me very well. It's what has given me the foundation to start my business, to be able to persevere, to be able to jump, and be determined. And as an entrepreneur, entrepreneurial endeavors can often be like roller coasters, right? So you have a great day, you have not such a great day. But I think that has helped me. And so, yes, that's what I would say.
It's when they first asked me what's my superpower, I was like, I don't know what my superpower is, and I was kind of sitting with it, and I realized that that I think that my superpower is that I have a very strong ability to multitask, and for me, that's been instrumental in being able to keep my career and keep working and raise my children and walk my kids to school in the morning. So I've been very strategic and used my multitasking abilities to do things like be on a board of directors in the entertainment business, produce a conference in the entertainment business, still developing and creating content in the entertainment business, but not having to maybe go always in the most traditional route, and sort of being open to other avenues of being successful in the entertainment business, but being able to understand my priorities and how to find that balance. And I do a lot of things. Sometimes I teach, sometimes I'm on the board, I have the kids, I do community service at my kids' schools. I'm the chair of the community service committee at my kids' school. And people say to me, well, how do you do it all? And I would say, well, I guess that's my superpower, is that I'm able to compartmentalize and be able to keep everything sort of in a straight line for myself. But I know that's a skill and that's a bit of a superpower, but I also feel like that's a point of survival for me, to be able to stay afloat in the business and keep going, and be able to still do community service, raise my kids, give back to the entertainment industry, and still develop content.
So to move on to our next section, I like Adele to pick up, to lead in terms of individual questioning. And we'll move into this, each one of our panelists would get to address. But to the next question, if any one of you want to add to what Adele has to say. Adele, you talked about synthesizing information. And in fact, another amazing writer who is known for doing that, Malcolm Gladwell, just came up with amazing books, Talking to Strangers, right? And talking is what you all do, and you're all experts, and all your superpowers are kind of anchor in communications. And you yourself, Adele, you use media coaching, use communications to empower others and let them to empower others. This thesis of Gladwell's new book is about how badly we talk to strangers, how incapable we are, how inadequate we are at presenting ourselves. And so the corollary then, I think, is how badly is it for women when we have to advance ourselves? In the last panel, one of the panelists talked about how she is being, she was not well liked because she appeared to be aggressive, because she was being assertive. And how do you champion for yourself and others, other women, while balancing that communication skill set you have?
It's a great question. Great question. And actually, it's so funny that you mentioned the word balance, because it's one of those words that I find in the workplace that is never associated with men. How do you balance this and that? And then they never ask men this question, right? But it is very important. It is a bit of a dance to not be too aggressive when going into the boardroom, to dress a certain way, to present yourself in a certain way. But it really is important to build those relationships at work, to invest in yourself, which was actually my quote that I mentioned when Angela had asked. So all of these things are really, really, really important when you're talking about communication. I would also say to not be intimidated when you go in. As an example, if I can, you're talking a little bit about equity, going into a negotiation. I always say, prepare yourself a year out. So sometimes people say, oh, my review is up, and so they prepare, maybe they're good and they prepare a week before. Maybe they've been a little lazy and they prepare a day or two before. I would say, reverse engineer things. So start a year out, plan, have your goals, write your goals out, have your monetary goals. When I work with my clients, I actually have them create, no matter if they're acting students or if they're an attorney or a physician, I have them create vision boards for themselves so they know where they want to go. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years out. And so that's really, really important to keep your goals in front of you, your monetary goals, what you want to do as far as your community, what type of impact you want to make. If it's within your organization, how can you go about that? How can you best, or how can you connect and either be a mentor to someone else, or allow yourself to be mentored by someone that you admire. So creating relationships is really at the foundation of all of this. And as you referenced Malcolm Gladwell's book, which I haven't read yet, but I have seen his interview, I think that's really at the core of communication. So building those relationships.
Great. In fact, I was going to segue into gender wage gap. Jamie, do you want to?
Well, I want to just add that one thing. I do teach some pitching, like film pitching, and do participate in some labs, various writers' labs and stuff like that. And one thing that comes up a lot is sort of like self-perception, like how you see me is different than how I see myself. And so sometimes I do have to tell myself, I have to remind myself of that. It's just kind of to add on that while I see myself one way, I have to remember that, because we all have our days where we feel like, well, why am I sitting at this? How can I be sitting at this table with these amazing women? Or how, can I be up for this interview? Or how can I be in the room with these people? And so sometimes I have to tell myself, to remind myself how other people see me versus how I see myself. And I think that's just a big part of presentation and communication, to give yourself a little bit more confidence.
Anything else to add? Veronica?
I've had the most success in terms of asking for a raise or getting some sort of promotion or some project I wanted to get greenlit, is when I can tie what I'm looking for with the company goals. And this is an established company. I would imagine it's different if you're an entrepreneur and working for yourself, but if you're working for a set organization, say we're looking to reach more professional women, well, I've developed a podcast that ties into this goal. And that just makes it's just that much easier, and you have that much more of a case for your success and for them to approve of what you're doing and to see the value in what you're doing if it already ties in with what they are thinking as an organization. It's a bit harder when you're doing something that's completely out of left field, but if you can tie in with the whole idea of this advances all of us and this is a collaborative effort and the entire company looks good, or this one division of the company looks good because of my efforts, or this is our efforts, I think that can be helpful. I think the point before about not just preparing for your review the week before is a good one. I try to stay in contact with some of the higher up people in my organization throughout the year. So they're not hearing from me from the first time like a week before my review. Like I am sharing some of the wins we've collected over the year throughout the year. So that is a continuous process. I also keep track in a spreadsheet of my wins. So it's easy for me to write a self-review because I've got a whole year's worth of wins, and it makes you feel more confident day to day as well.
Oh, great.
But we also have to remember that there's a huge double standard in this world. And while the women that are up here are absolutely incredible, and when they go into, well, most of them, work for themselves or can write their own paychecks, when they go in to ask for a raise or go in for a job, they're overly qualified. When a man, in the most part, goes in for a promotion or for a raise, or they're going to look for a job, they'll go for a job that they may tick 2 or 3 of the boxes out of the 10 that are listed, but it doesn't matter to them because they're just going to put their hat into the ring, all right? Women, on the other hand, don't necessarily do that. They'll see a job and they'll say, oh, this job would be perfect for me, but the qualifications say that I need to have 10 years of experience. I only have 6. It says master's preferred. I only have a bachelor's. It says I need to have this title. I only have this title. And so they won't go for it, even though it would be a perfect job for them. You got to throw away those preconceived notions. And if you think you're good enough for something, then go for it. Because if you were a man, I'm sorry to say, you would just do it. And you've got to just think, don't think about not being good enough for something. Think about, this is what I want to do. And what's the worst they can say? No? And how much have you lost? You put in an application, right? It's the same, you look at politicians. That's why so many less women run for public office. It's because there are men that are wholly unqualified to run for office that get elected. We see that. It's just because they decided to run. So run or
Thank you.
apply.
Thank you, Eleanor. So, do you have something, Alex?
Yeah,
Just
I was
quickly
just-
a minute, maybe.
Yeah, it's really quick. I'm supporting what she's saying because, as I said before, and it was, for me in my journey, it's been really frustrating. I have like the two experiences. I have job interviews where almost all of them I had the same answer, that I was overqualified, and I never got the opportunity. But then all the jobs that I had and where I was able to grow, as I said before, I didn't have any job interviews or I didn't apply for them. I look for the person in charge and I send an email and I said, I want to write for your medium. I want to do this. I want to do that. Sometimes it works, sometimes don't. But for me, most of the time, those were the jobs that I had before becoming an entrepreneur. So yes, you have to be confident. And for people like me that are bilingual, it's also a challenge because we're thinking, I think in Spanish, and then something else is coming in English. So sometimes I get to prepare more than usual because sometimes I can sound shy and that I'm not secure of myself, but sometimes I can sound very aggressive. So it's also a balance, as they mentioned. It's everything in preparation, how you want to sound, but always with the confidence.
So I think it's a wonderful segue into the gender wage gap. The Institute for Women's Public Policy Research reports that in 2018, full-time working women are earning 80 cents, 82 cents to the dollar as their male counterparts. And that's the gender wage gap we've been talking about. And if we go along the growth rate in the last 50 years, we'll be reaching 2059 until we get some kind of wage parity. Is that realistic? And so Jamie, with the New York women in film and television, have been working on addressing issues to promote gender parity, as well as sexual harassment, which is now 2 years into the Me Too movement. So tell us more about what the Institute is doing.
So New York Women in Film and Television is a membership organization. We have over 2,300 members, which has really, I would say, grown in the last several years. We advocate for women's issues within the industry, and we are, trying to create peer groups and give women support. We have women at all different levels in the industry, from very high up to our next wave members, who are women that are more starting out in the industry that maybe have 1 or 2 credits. And we try to provide services across the board that work for different levels of participation. We just did our first annual summit at the Ford Foundation. This year, we have a new executive director, and she's very, very interested in issues around pay equity. She's also a Latina woman, and those statistics are even worse in terms of pay equity. So we just did a summit, and we really focused on 3 issues, which were pay equity, sexual harassment, and diversity and inclusion. And then the Ford Foundation is giving us a grant to then do a report on the summit and figure out, talk about more ways to keep moving forward. We also had our former board president. She spoke at the New York City Human Rights Commission, just recently did a hearing on sexual harassment, which was the first time since the 1970s. And the things that we're asking for are more standard operating procedures to protect freelancers, because the film business is very much about freelance workers. Sexual harassment training for people at the manager level, and just more, parity across the board. Obviously, there's a lot of actresses that are pushing for pay equity, and that is making a big difference. The percentages of female directors are very low, so we're doing a lot of work around that. And I do think the needle is changing. I mean, there's still a big push to do, but we also do. We've partnered with Women in Film in LA, and we're not the only ones, but there are a lot of helplines now that you can call, where you can call and say, something has happened, I've been harassed. They'll either put you in touch with a lawyer that will do pro bono work, also counseling services. So it's happening at a variety of levels. And as New York Women in Film and Television, we feel like we want to be part of that conversation. We want to help, push these conversations forward and come up with, real ideas. The unions are also doing a lot. They're taking it on, and I can, speak from experience. Also, my husband is a producer, and people are feeling more. They're feeling more comfortable coming forward now. Someone will come to him on set and say, this happened or this happened, and he has to. Not that he wouldn't have, but he has to address it now. If someone comes to him and says, this made me uncomfortable, or this didn't seem fair. So I think there's a stronger push now for people to take responsibility and for people to really act on complaints. And there are more avenues for people to complain, or not complain, but to bring up issues of harassment. The pay equity, there's tons of studies that are being done. Gina Davis is doing a lot in this space. She just got hired by a studio to, read scripts and really, look at what's happening. There's also, studios are hiring women that their specialty is to really work on intimate scenes. Because people were feeling very uncomfortable about how people were being treated how women were being treated during those scenes, and that there was no that there was no sensitivity to it in terms of being on a set and what that meant, and having 40 people watching you do this. So that is now something that's a new thing that's come up. It's a new category of job, of someone who's really specializes in how to make actresses feel more comfortable on set. So I think there's a lot being done. I think it's a very optimistic time. It doesn't mean that there isn't still a lot to do, but I do think the dam has broken, and people are very aware. And I just think on sets now, people's voices are being heard.
Thank you, Jamie. And for much of my close to 30-year career as a government official and public policy specialist, I've seen a good amount of technically correct, technically viable proposals that go through the channels for legislation. And for some reasons, and usually only two reasons, it's either political/stakeholder support or implementation feasibility. And so that requires both in the policy front and in our own personal marketing and personal advancement, how do you tweak something, right? The ability to iterate when something doesn't go wrong. And it's really the central theme of resiliency. And so we have an author right here with us, Veronica, who's written the book on resiliency. I would love Veronica to tell us more about your interviews with women who are successful and who have counter setbacks themselves, and how they come back to charging their road to superpower.
Sure, and if I can just add one more thing about the pay issue. Within my own company and within some other competitors' companies, one thing that's been really helpful is harnessing male allies. So male allies saying how much they make. And so then I, as a woman, know how much I need to be on target with, like how much I'm missing out in terms of pay. And so if you can find those guys in the organization that are willing to share that information, that can be super powerful. Also, the same thing with harassment. Just last week at a very well-known financial advisor conference, conference for CEOs, a billionaire named Ken Fisher, and this is public so I can say this, made some very inappropriate comments about women on stage. And there was a confidentiality agreement that all the participants of the conference had to sign, or at least agree to. Yet one guy who was in the audience broke that agreement, and he went on Twitter and he filmed a video of himself saying how disturbed he was by these comments that were offensive to women. And so I think there's some really good guys out there that are willing to lend their support and their voice. So if we can encourage them and we can seek them out, I think that can be really helpful in advancing the cause overall.
Right, to go to support, right?
Yeah, exactly. So in terms of the in terms of resilience, that's a key theme for the women I've interviewed, everyone from Aisha Curry to Maria Sharapova, Maria Bartiromo, Rebecca Minkoff. All of them at various times have been knocked down in various ways, whether it's financially, their careers, personally. And the key to their success is that they fall down, but they get up as quickly as possible. And so that may mean continuing to do what they were doing. Like, for example, in the case of Mary Higgins Clark, who's an author, she's a famous book author, multi-millionaire, bestseller. She wasn't always successful, though. She had to write about 50 or 60 short stories that were rejected by various publications, and tons of editors wrote to her telling her what a bad writer she was. But she didn't give up. What she did is she gave up those short story career ambitions and she pivoted to books. And her first book wasn't that much of a success, but then her second book was a huge success. And she was able to branch out from there. So sometimes being resilient is about knowing when to pivot. And so you may, as an entrepreneur, you may start out with one business line, but you might want to eventually adjust to a different business line because that's where the customers are. So being open-minded enough to pivot when you need to, and also having that core belief in yourself. I think that's what the panel's been speaking about a lot, is that some of the most successful women I've spoken to have these positive affirmations that they say to themselves every morning. Now, it might sound weird and quirky, but some of them have actually a post-it on their mirror that they read over out loud, or just say it over and over again. And when those self-doubts come out in their head, most of the time it's in your own head, right? You're talking yourself out of something. They bring up that like affirmation. They bring that up, that key phrase, and they'll say it to themselves silently in their head to get that positive vibe going again. So I would encourage you, I'm starting to do this myself, have your list of 5 affirmations that maybe you say to yourself in the morning. And this is a matter of boosting your own confidence and just acknowledging who you truly are.
And Eleanor, you
Wait,
have.
can I just add one thing to that? That there was an article in the an op-ed in the New York Times sometime this year or last year, and it was like someone who, maybe they worked in the entertainment business or some business where you had to like submit you had to do a lot of submissions, and it was about how she was like, you have to submit to like 100 places, but it only takes one yes. And so just I say that to writers that I work with in film and television, because there's so much rejection. And I'll just say to someone, I'll just be like, it only takes one yes. Like, just keep pushing forward. Just keep going.
And Eleanor, how would you pivot then? Because you came from a very, very discernible, for you, a challenge in childhood. And while in your career, if you were a fashion designer, having dyslexia may not be as apparent of an impediment. You work in communications. So how do you channel that into supercharging your career?
Well, first of all, going back to the story of my dyslexia, it was about proving people wrong, proving the people that were the biggest naysayers wrong. So that teacher that I had in the 6th grade that told me I was dumb and I was never going to amount to anything, I ran into her a few weeks after I graduated from high school, and she was walking down the street, and she was walking out of a deli or something, and she said, "Oh, did you graduate from high school? Are you going to trade school?" I said, "No, actually, I'm going to be a scholar at St. Lawrence University." And she said, "Oh, okay." So fast forward 5 years later, I just finished a year of graduate school at Stockholm University and finished my 4 years of college at St. Lawrence. And I was about to start at the Amsterdam News, and I ran into her. And she said, "Oh, so did you graduate from college? Do you have a job?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'm an editor at the Amsterdam News. And what are you doing, Mrs. Carey?" And she said, "I've retired." And I just looked at her and I said, "Thank God." And I walked away and I never saw her again. And, you know, I just thanked God that no other child was going to have to be subjected to her. And, you know, those stories and the messages of her and her negativity and her just putting me in a corner and not teaching me just taught me to find other people that did believe in me. And, you know, as an editor, it's called spell check.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because, you know, when I was in elementary school, you know, we didn't really even have computers yet. You know, when I was in college, I got my first word processor. It was a Brother word processor when I was in college. It wasn't till the newspaper did not have computers till I got there. So, I mean, it's a whole different world. So, you know, things like dyslexia are easier to overcome. They're still definitely an impediment, and it takes a while. It takes a lot of hard work, and it means learning differently. It doesn't mean you can't learn. It means you've got to rewire your brain and you need to have people that are going to believe in you and they're going to work with you and are going to learn the way you need to learn how to learn. But it doesn't mean that you're any less smart. I mean, some of the most brilliant people in history had learning disabilities. And so it means training other people to know that having a learning disability doesn't mean that you're stupid. And I think that's one of the things that I had to do and that my teachers learned from me back in the 1970s. I got one of the nicest letters I ever got was in 1994 when a piece ran in the New York Times about me, a public lives piece. And I got a letter from my 5th grade teacher, a woman named Gloria Kagan. And she wrote a letter to me saying, "It's so great to see my kids turn out so well. You taught me what a learning disability really looked like." Now, Gloria Kagan was the mother of the Supreme Court Justice, Elena Kagan. You know, that meant the world to me.
Yeah.
Because she did not understand what a learning disability was before she had me as a student.
Wow.
And it was her colleague who was the one that called me stupid. But it's just what the difference a wall can, you know, between two people, a classroom wall, but one person that was open-minded and somebody else that was just so set in their ways. But you can change people's minds sometimes by just showing them what you actually can do.
Thank you, Eleanor. You mentioned changing mindsets, and changing mindsets is important. And sometimes we have to do that for ourselves. And I think that's just what Alex did. When she came to the US to take a job that she thought she had, job was not there. What did she do? Someone would have gone home, right, to the Dominican Republic, but she stayed. And so here's her story.
So it was 2008, and I was in the Dominican Republic. I was a TV producer, and I was working in my own show. I just came back from Barcelona, where I did my master, I was working with other producers. I was close to my family and friends, so everything looked like very stable and good. But for me, I discovered that every time that I reach stability, there's a pattern that I have to break. And I have discovered that is the comfort zone. So at that time, everything was going good. But after coming back from Barcelona, there was something that I couldn't stay in my country. I wanted to go back there. I wanted to do something else. And I started reaching out to one person in one big medium in Miami, and I said, I want to write for your magazine. And surprisingly, because she didn't know who I was, or we didn't have any context, she wrote to me and said, yeah, I have an opportunity for you, but you have to move to Miami. So I left everything, I packed my bags, I talked to my uncle, and I moved to Miami. Meanwhile, another person from another network also told me I might have an opportunity for you. So I went in the airplane thinking like, oh, should I get this one? Should I get this one? Like, what do I see myself doing? And I get to Miami, and again, it's the 2008. The financial crisis was hitting this country, and 2 weeks later, the two people said the same thing. Like, we can't hire you anymore. We are laying off our employees because we are in the middle of a crisis, and we just freeze all the hirings. So I was in Miami, nothing to do, and I was like, well. This story will be different if I didn't have one privilege, that it was my American passport. I'm sure if I didn't have one, the story will be different. I don't know why I got emotional. So then, like, few months later, I decided to stay, and then I came to New York, and my high school friends and college friends, they were here. Living together, it looked like the sitcoms, like Friends. They're raising a child together, they're living in a store, and I'm like, oh, I like this. And I packed my bags, and a week later, I moved to New York. And a week later, I went to visit my cousin in her office, and I see everything that they're doing. They're doing a film festival. They have a web where they write about the Dominican Republic, and I had lunch with my cousin. Very good to see you. And who's your editorial manager? And I talked to her. And I was like, I want to work here. What do you have for me? Like, I want to write for your medium. And she's like, no, we don't have any opportunities. And I was like, well, I just moved to New York. I don't have anything to do. I'm sleeping on a sofa. I'll work for free. I'll do anything. And that afternoon, she called me. I became a volunteer for the film festival, where I worked for free for 3 months. And after that, they were like, oh, we love your performance. We want to keep you, but we don't have an opportunity, like a position for you. And then I was like, well, you don't have a media department, so let me create your media department. And I created my position. And that's how I stayed in that organization for 7 years. I went from being a volunteer to a multimedia coordinator and then manager. And 7 years later, I decided that I wanted to fly and do my business. And I left that organization with a media department, with a whole team, with social media presence, with 3 short films that win awards, more than 500 videos on YouTube, and blogs and everything. And that's how I'm now doing my own dream and not the dream of others, working in my own business, which is Yucalab Digital Media, and also my personal project, which is Latinas in Media, which is my purpose and where I share my research and my opportunities with other Latinas.
Thank you so much for sharing. Alex, Alex's stories really ties in and encapsulates many of your experiences and the lessons that we've heard this morning, from making sense out of chaos, using your voice, anchoring in parental support and proving people wrong, being resilient, an ability to connect with people, to synthesize complex information, and to channel in a way that would advance yourself and others, and by building allies and stakeholder support, while building up a list of affirmations and using spell check and tools that technology that have afforded us in and modern times. So learning differently, and all of that really congeal into how we advance as a community. And we come to a final portion before the Q&A. I've asked our esteemed panel to engage us in a rapid fire, and that would be a 30-second, 30-second just top of mind of what they would say to you as students in the audience. When I was a college student, one of my most memorable experience listening to a speaker was at my commencement exercises. And one speaker really stood out, and she was a woman superhero like you, and she was a media, political analyst for ABC and NPR, and she came from a long line of public servants. Her parents served in Congress, were senators. Her sister was the mayor of a little college town in New Jersey. So Cookie Roberts passed away last month. I took her calling. She said to join public service, to advance what others could not do, but by putting yourself into the service of others and in the nations. And so, what would you say in 30 seconds to someone who may be listening to you now and to follow your call? We'll begin with Veronica.
I would say to ask for what you want, and you can start by doing small things, like if you ordered something at a restaurant and it's not what you like, in a nice way, ask for a change. Making those small asks can eventually get you more confident. And I'd also say, if you know what you want to do, go for it. There's never a great time. There's never a perfect time to start a business or start a family or what have you. So if you know what you truly want, I would say just take that leap and go for it. Even if it's on a part-time basis, you can do it, and that might be a way in. That's how I got into journalism. I did it part-time at night and weekends. So take that first step.
I'm going to finish with the quote that I wrote for this panel. So if you're creative like me and you have lots of ideas coming to your mind, there will be one that will stick and one that you sleep. When you discover it, work hard and make it happen. It's up to you how far you can get. It's only up to you.
What I'm going to say is that there's room at the table, and that's whether it's the boardroom or whether it's at another office or wherever, for more of us. Always open the door, bring people with you, bring them behind you, leave room for them, make room for them. Don't leave them behind. Always, always, always help out your sisters and your brothers. Don't be selfish in that respect. Don't think because you've got a seat at the table, you can't make room for somebody else to have a seat at the table. With numbers, there is strength. It is not the opposite. Because you have a seat at a boardroom does not mean that you being the only one is better than you having more at the table. A lot of people think that way. It's a backwards way of thinking. In strength, there is numbers. Help to build those numbers up. Help to build each other up. Because if you don't do it, nobody else will.
Love that. I would say keep your eyes on the prize. Keep your goals in front of you at all times. Have the ability to be flexible, because sometimes your expectation is one thing and reality is another. But if you fall 7 times, get up 8. Expect that there will be challenges in front of you, and there will be. Grow from that, learn from that, help others along the way. I think that's really, really important. And be determined. You know, some people say, hey, you want to become an entrepreneur, just jump, and the net shall appear. I've heard that a million times. But although it sounds beautiful, I would also say always prepare. Prepare for what's in front of you. Prepare financially, prepare your mind for success, whether that's meditation, prayer, affirmations, as was mentioned before, reading books, getting mentored. All of these things should help you along your journey to success. And I wish you well.
I would say two things. One is both kind of touch on what's been said, but this concept of strategy, that for me, I do think about goals and I'm very strategically oriented, but I am constantly surprised at the path that I take to reach those goals, and to be open to that there's not one way to get to the end point, and to be open and excited, and let yourself be happily surprised when you end up in a slightly different spot, but it's still giving you either the same emotional return or the same career return, because that's something that's been very personal to me. The other thing is, I agree with the mentoring. I do a lot of mentoring, and even this week I got a call from someone who said I just got a new job. I'm working for these producers. They want to put money into TV shows, and they want to do some development. You were always so nice to me. I want to help you. And so that I wasn't nice to him because I thought he was going to call me 10 years later, but I do try to be kind to people, and I do even yesterday a young woman worked for me on this conference. She's 25 years old. She's lovely, and she said, "Can I meet you?" And I said, "Of course." So yesterday I had coffee with her, and it takes time to do these things. It is time consuming, but people helped me along the way, and I just really want to give back, because it's a very hard business. These businesses are not easy to break into, and people need help.
Thank you. And that brings us to less than an hour. And I think I've done my timekeeping work, and we have some time for Q&A as well. Great.
I really appreciate all of the panelists, their work in the media and entertainment industry. And as things go, it always is when you hear one thing, it looks like everyone's moving in the same path. At the Minority Business Development Agency Center at 48 Wall Street on November 12th, we are hosting Minorities in Media and Entertainment Summit, where we're going to bring procurement together with the media $27 billion industry in New York State, and we really feel strongly that minorities should have a piece of it. We invite all of you to come. November 12th, 48 Wall Street.
I am talking about the underground discrimination in the job market of women over 50. We have to end up taking jobs, we use no skills, we learn nothing, the salaries are horrendous, and we have to listen to these lousy, nasty little boys network make these snide, "You're too slow, well, why don't you retire? Why don't you go somewhere else?" In the span of 2 years, I've had 3 jobs like that. 2 of them I quit, 1 of them I was fired, and it is absolutely disgusting. I do have a part-time job that is union. I work at the Nassau Coliseum. I make $17 an hour, and I've been there 2.5 years. Next year, in April, I will be making $17.75 an hour. I do see a difference between union and non-union. I happen to be, one time I was anti-union, I am now pro-union.
Thank you guys for your insights. I have a 2-part question. I first want to start by saying that we face a lot of unique challenges as women. And there are times, some of those challenges we see with other women, and so we get blocked along the way. And so the first part of my question is, can you share a situation in your career where you might have been blocked by another woman? How did you overcome that? And the second part of it is, why is allyship amongst women in business so important?
Alliance, okay.
I would just say for myself that I don't see it as I don't have. I think that you can have difficult situations. I hear you, and I do hear you. I can't sit here and say, like, I've had this particular situation with a woman where I felt blocked by a woman. I have worked with very difficult women. I have worked with very difficult men. And for me, I just have to treat it in the same, I have to treat it the same. That I don't want to see gender in that way. I've worked with extremely misogynistic men, and I've worked with women that are competitive, or can be catty, but I think it happens with both genders, and I think you have to maybe try to put that aside, the gender part, and just say, how do I deal with this human being that is being difficult or competitive or challenging? Because I think we deal with both. I don't know. That's my best answer.
Was it someone that was a peer, or was it somebody that was above you? Just asking. Yeah. All right. Well, what I'm going to say is, while you may not be able to do something with some of it, just remember and make sure that you don't do it to somebody else. Going back to what I was saying before, bring people up instead of trying to keep them down.
And I would say, remember who you are as a person, and don't let that person get in your head or affect your self-esteem. And I think that's where those kind of affirmations come into play. Also, sometimes you can luck out and outlast that person. My first job, I had a horrible boss. This wasn't at Dow Jones. This was at another media company. And she eventually was fired because she wasn't doing her job and there were some other issues. So I was fortunate enough to outlast her. I think having allies throughout the company, whether it's other women, that helped me at the time. I got to know some other senior women. I got to know some senior guys, and that helped me feel not as isolated, because I think sometimes when you're dealing with a bully, whether it's a man or a woman, they're going to try to isolate you, even though they're your boss. I think it's important for you to form outside relationships and just have other hobbies outside of work too. I think that kept me sane when I've dealt with bad situations, whether it's your, meditation or exercise or friends, just something so you don't feel like you're just stuck in a situation.
I think she would like to.
So I would also say, and yes, I have, unfortunately, I think as you go throughout your career, you will encounter people that are challenging and very difficult to work with. And I always employ the kill them with kindness. And sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. I'm thinking of one person in particular who was above me. And she had a really big challenge with me from the very beginning. I would say midway through our time working together, she was quite supportive, but I think what she was doing was testing me. She was trying to figure out, does she belong here? Like, does she know? Can she figure things out? There might have been some other things at play, but I really do think that she was, in her own unique way, trying to bring out the best. I wouldn't have gone about it the same way. And I would echo what you said, and if that's something that you've experienced, whether from a man or a woman, just don't turn around and do that to someone else. It is really hurtful. And I've actually heard Oprah say that some of the most hurtful things she's experienced in her career have unfortunately come from women. I don't feel that here at all today, and I think that we should take this energy that we have today, and whenever that comes about, think about this moment and try to spread that positivity as opposed to trying to bring someone down. Lift them up. That's what I would say.
I think there's another question back there.
Yes, I'm a young student. I want to raise a question today. My question is about sexual harassment. I feel like it's sexual harassment, like the campaign of sexual harassment, is creating a fear in men. Okay, because I feel like there is a crisis now, like especially from women who have a successful career and they can't find a man. They have a successful career and they can't find a man. And then I feel like the men, they have a fear of like dating, you know, having a relationship with women. Because I remember my last job, I told the women, "You're beautiful." And later on, the boss came, "Oh, be careful of sexual harassment." I feel like there is a fear, because I feel like it's an impact of the relationship, dating, like, you can even touch a woman. Because the rules of seduction say, sometimes a woman can say yes, but deeply inside she might say, like, yeah, like, sometimes she might say no, but deeply inside she might say yes. But that's how it's worked for the rules of like seduction. Sometimes you might talk to a woman, she say no, but inside she say yes. But how can you make a campaign about that? Because there is an impact on reproduction, on relationship, how like women, I feel like there is a fear of even talk to women for now. I don't know how you can make a campaign to like let people know that you're not like some kind of demon that men can approach. Yeah.
I would say if you're a good guy, you have nothing to worry about. And I also want to make sure it's not used as an excuse too, right? Not to help mentor a woman or promote a woman because you're afraid of sexual harassment. I think that's a danger.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo what you're saying, which is that if just be the best person you can be. I do think this is a much bigger question that can be answered here, and these things are they're extremely complicated. I think there's a lot of it. I mean, some of it is cut and dry, and some of it isn't. But ultimately, you can only be responsible for your own behavior. I do think there are also, though I've run into things with kids, like my 16-year-old niece, and dealing with issues of cultural norms, and where those lines kind of move, where the dial is, something that she's being taught in her, progressive Brooklyn school, and then she goes on a trip and someone's touchy-feely and they say it's called, so there's a lot of questions here. But I think ultimately you have to be responsible for your own behavior. And there was a problem, there is a problem, and so we can't ignore that side of it too.
Question?
Raphael Romero with Urban Fashion Incubator. All the topics you guys have covered are really terrific. But I did want to ask Ms. Gallagher from the Wall Street Journal. Sorry.
Dagger.
Yeah. The power of the internet is so integral to everything that we do. If you could share with us the power of podcasts.
Okay. Thanks for the question. I think podcasts are really special because you're right in the person's ears, right? There's probably nothing more intimate. And the way people listen to podcasts, people will listen in their cars, but they'll also sometimes listen in the bathroom or listen in their bedroom. And just to have that one-on-one access is really special. And I think especially among younger people in their 20s, there was I don't know how official the study was, but I saw the headline of the story, like some younger people see like their podcast hosts as their friends, and are spending a lot of time with the podcast in a way that they might have spent with friends in the past. So I think that's really interesting, and I see that in the emails I get and the messages I get from listeners. People will message me some really personal stories, and never in a million years did I think that would happen. I think it has a whole community unto itself, which is different from a print story, so to speak. It's a really fast-growing medium. I don't have the latest numbers, but I know in terms of subscribers, it's something that is, there's more and more podcasts out there. It's expected to expand. There's a ton of advertiser interest. I'm not really focused on that side of the business myself, but I hear that from the business people, that there's a lot of companies that want to get connected with podcasts. And I was recently at a conference called FinCon, which basically talks about personal finance and also media and the connections. And there's a lot of individuals, like sole business owners, who are starting their own podcasts and are getting contracts, some of them pretty significant, from major advertisers. And so these people are having their own business based on their podcast and also the offshoots of the podcast, whether it's an ebook or some other video series or what have you. So I think the business opportunity for entrepreneurs is substantial, and it's going to continue to grow. I don't hear any talk of retrenchment. I only hear about this sort of blockbuster growth. Yeah.
So we are under 12. So that means we wrapped up in an hour and 15 minutes. And Adele, do you have something to add? Yes.
Sorry, thank you. I wanted to offer everyone a free gift, and it's a free PDF download from my book, and it is quick tips on developing on-camera confidence. And because we know that 80% of content online, so it's not just podcasting, and podcasting is incredible, and I highly recommend being a guest, if not starting your own podcast for sure. But just being the ability to actually speak to your audience on camera and be able to amplify your message throughout the world, which is what the internet has allowed us to do now through social media, is really, really important. So these are 16 quick tips to developing your on-camera confidence. So if everyone has their cell phone, all you need to do is text the word media 101, all one word, media 101, to 33777. Again, the number is 33777, and you can follow the prompts. It'll just ask you for your email address and your name. And in about 5 seconds, you will receive an email with the free download.
Great.
Okay, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Adele. And these women, again, our esteemed panel here, exemplify the very best in superheroes, not just women superheroes. Your superpowers have helped change the world, and it's hard work. You've heard how hard they have come back from setbacks and how challenging finding the superpower and maintaining them, because you have to continue to work at it. You don't just have that from day one. And if some of you out there are still on that journey, do reflect on these lessons and to remember, as we have taught our students here at Berkeley College, collective action really requires so much more than your own competencies and your own confidence. It's about working with others, and not just the decision makers or the policy actors, but the very communities and individuals whose lives you're trying to help better. So if as women, we have a lot of work to do, but these super powerful women are leading the way. So give them another hand of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you, ladies, for an amazing morning and for joining our community this morning. Just a few notes. At 12:15, there will be a luncheon on the 8th floor where we will be networking with students. You can meet some of our panelists who were able to stay behind and our moderators. And also, we'll be sending out a recap of today's event. So we'll include, Adele, your text. We'll include Veronica, your podcast links, and everybody, please take advantage of these amazing resources and the storytelling and the inspiration that these women provide. And let's build on this community. Let's build on this day. So you'll be hearing from us in the next week with a recap of this amazing event. And thank you all for being here today. Thank you, ladies. You were amazing.